On President Xi's visit to Europe, we're joined by Adriano Bosoni in Austin, Texas. He's a senior Europe analyst at Stratfor, an American geopolitical intelligence group. Adriano, do you agree with our correspondent in Brussels, in Paris rather, that this is a new beginning for China and the European Union?
Well, the EU sees China as both a partner and a rival. A partner in the sense that they both share this desire to defend multilateral organizations, to fight together against climate change, to fight together against nuclear proliferation and things like that. But at the same time, the EU sees China as a rival, in the sense that the EU complains that Chinese investors have a much easier time investing in Europe than European investors investing in China, or that China is increasingly accessing strategic sectors of the European economy. So it's a mixed bag.
So do you get the sense that Europe has a common approach as to how to respond to China's economic influence?
No, there is some degree of discrepancy, especially between the larger economies and the smaller economies. Smaller economies, particularly in Central and Eastern Europe, are very welcoming to Chinese investment because they need the money, they could use the infrastructure, so in general they defend the idea of a greater Chinese presence. Bigger economies, and we have seen France and Germany in particular, are a bit more skeptical in the sense that they worry that Chinese investment will come with strings attached and with political influence.
EU and China expressed a rather united front against protectionism, but what about areas they don't necessarily eye to eye, maybe trade, technology, and then the Belt and Road Initiative?
Exactly. The European Union is looking for ways to protect itself against what many, but not all of the countries perceive as increasing Chinese penetration. As I said before, on strategic infrastructure, on strategic know-how, sensible technology, and they are looking for ways to compete against that. Ideas on the table include a greater oversight at the continental level of Chinese investment, or this recent Franco-German proposal to change the EU's antitrust regulations to create industrial champions, large mega companies that would be in a better position to compete against their Chinese rivals. But of course, not everyone in Europe supports these plans.
Adriano, one of the biggest complaints EU has is that their companies, European companies, don't have the same level of access in Chinese markets that Chinese companies have in European markets. Is that a valid point? And will China do something about it?
From the European perspective, the Chinese-European relationship should be based on reciprocity. The Europeans argue that when Chinese companies go to Europe, they find it very easy to invest pretty much in whatever sector of the economy that they want. Whereas when European investors try to do business in China, they face obstacles that Chinese investors do not face in Europe. The EU can pressure China to change some of its regulations and the way that it deals with foreign investors. The EU could use the strong trade relationship to try to influence the Chinese government, but at the end of the day, it seems unlikely that China will significantly open its economy to European investments in the way, at least, that the Europeans would like to.
And a very quick question on the Belt and Road. Italy has already signed on. Do you see other European countries doing that as well after this gathering?
There seems to be an East-West divide with some components of a small versus big divide, in the sense that smaller European economies are more welcoming. We have seen many countries, for instance Greece, reaching big contracts and agreements with China, whereas the farther west you go, the more skeptical the countries become. And we have seen how France and Germany have been pushing back against Chinese investment. That's what makes Italy a very interesting case, because it's the first G7 country to actually sign a memorandum of understanding. But even within Italy, this is creating frictions, as the two members of the government coalition are not exactly on the same page. So the memorandum of understanding is non-binding, so it's not a given that cooperation will be very comprehensive.
All right, Adriano Bosoni, we have to leave it there. Thank you.